We just went through the first price signature, which are failure swings. That is an area in the market which we do not want to trade away from. Now we're going to talk about protected swings. These are areas that we do look to trade away from. That is the main differentiator between the two. And we're going to first talk about manipulations. Manipulations are going to occur at relevant highs or relevant lows. This example shows a relevant low in the market. As we keep going through this course, you're going to really understand what makes a swing relevant, but this is just a general concept for now. That's where we know it's going to take place. So we're looking at a relevant low in the market. This is where we could expect a manipulation to take place. Once the relevant high or low is identified in the market, a manipulation is going to be trading into that point and then almost immediately turning back away. So this example here shows a relevant low identified. We have that marked out. Price trades down into it and then turns back higher immediately. If it's a relevant high in the market, price will trade up into it and then drop right back down lower right after. That is a characteristic of a manipulation because as you'll learn, the way that we define relevant highs and lows, these swing points in the market, they are extremes of the highs and lows. There is nothing else beyond that point, and we do that for a reason because once price trades into it, if it doesn't react, that is a telling sign that there is not a valid manipulation taking place. So that's one characteristic we really want to be strict on. Once that manipulation takes place in the way that we look for it, the relevant low, running that out, immediately turning higher, the confirmation is a change in state of delivery. Now, what is that if you're not familiar? It's the opposing candles that are formed into the point of reversal, which are then closed through. So this is a bullish manipulation. That means we're looking at the series or single down close candles, which ran into that lowest low. That's the manipulation. We're going to draw out the opening price of the highest down close candle in that series. Once we close through that, that is a confirmation that this low does not need to be traded back to. This becomes the protected swing. If we're thinking about a bearish example on a manipulation, we have that relevant high marked out and identified. Price trades up into it. That series or single up close candle, which trades up into that point, we're looking at the opening price of the lowest up close candle in that series. Once price trades below and closes below that level, that is a confirmation that the high where price manipulated does not need to be traded back to. After you get confirmation with a manipulation, which is obviously the change in state of delivery, like we just mentioned on the close of this candle here in this example, that would be your confirmation. The next thing you want to do is, where does my invalidation point get set? So what can the market do after my confirmation that would invalidate the manipulation? Because you want to have that really well defined. This really depends on the step of the model that you are in. When we're working with higher time frame framework, trying to establish a bias or confirm one, think hourly time frame or above. That's where we're going to be setting that invalidation point at the highest body to the lowest body, which ran into that relevant swing to form that manipulation. So this candle body high to this candle body low, draw out equilibrium of that point. That is your invalidation. Following the confirmation here, we look for the market to remain above that point because this is a bullish manipulation. We don't want to see it drop below here because that would be too deep of a run to say that it's respecting these opposing close candles. When observing a manipulation for an entry on these lower time frames, when you get that close, the confirmation is exactly the same as any other step in the model. This here is your confirmation. We're thinking about an entry. Your invalidation point does not go to equilibrium of the opposing close candles. It goes on the opposing swing point marked out by 2 here, which you can reference in the text of the course in this lesson. This is where your stop loss would go when you take an entry. We never want to have it internal. It's always going at that opposing swing point because on these lower time frames, the market can make that deeper run while still keeping you in that trade. And we want to avoid getting unnecessarily and prematurely stopped out of any trade. Referencing back to what I talked about earlier of the characteristics on a manipulation, this here would show a lack of urgency on the manipulation where you would expect it to take place. So you have that relevant swing marked out and identified in the market. Price trades down into it. It does not immediately turn back higher and instead starts to fade away. That is not a valid manipulation. You don't get your confirmation here, and that would be considered invalid. While this logic remains consistent across all time frames, there are certain steps in the model which will apply this slightly differently because there are trade opportunities that come from failed manipulations. Pairing directly with what we just discussed about manipulations, the second type of protected swing is a divergence. That is a confluence to a manipulation, and they really do almost mean the same thing, because to have a divergence, that means there has to be a manipulation on a correlated pair. Using this here as an example, we have that relevant swing identified just like we would as usual. One pair here makes that manipulation, trading back down into it and then immediately turning higher, while the correlated pair also has that relevant swing in the market, trades back towards that low, but not quite through it. It makes a higher low where the correlated pair makes a lower low. That is a divergence signature. One pair makes that lower low to this low, the other makes a higher low. That is what we're looking for, and it acts in confluence to the manipulation. That is just giving us added confidence that is actually taking place. When considering the confirmation piece of the pair that has a divergence, it slightly varies from the manipulation. So when we use the confirmation for a manipulation, we use that series of opposing candles that made the lowest low before returning higher. Of course, this is a bullish example, but for a divergence, since the other pair made the lower low at that same point, we're going to draw from this series of opposing candles that made the higher low. That is going to be where we mark that out, the highest down close candles in that particular series. Once we get that close, that is our confirmation on the pair that has the divergence. If we were thinking about this for a bearish example, one pair would make that manipulation through the relevant swing to the left, while the other would make a lower high to that same point. The confirmation piece would be that series of up close candles that made that lower high to the relevant swing to the left. We're looking at the lowest up close candle, drawing out that opening price. Once we close below that point, that is a confirmation of a bearish divergence on that pair. This is completely optional, but if you want an added layer of confirmation when a divergence is present, then you can look for a close to the opposing candles on both pairs, the one with a manipulation and also the one with a divergence. That's just done to ensure there's no concern with any difference in relative strength or weakness between the two pairs, as a divergence does imply.